At the outset of the pandemic, now it's more than 2 years ago, my partner Alan Howard and I recorded a series of podcasts on what was then a new phenomenon, which was conducting mediations remotely using Zoom or a similar platform. Much of what we talked about was largely predictions. All of us had done bits and pieces of remote mediation to that time, but few of us had done fully remote mediations or done many of them. And so we were predicting what it would be like to shift over to the remote format. Now that we've had more than 2 years of experience and many remote mediations under our belts, I thought it'd be helpful to recap and see how it's actually turned out to be in practice, what has worked and what has not worked as well. Here are the good things. As expected, with remote mediations, it's been much easier to schedule mediations than it was with the live format. That includes it's easier to persuade the parties to participate in the mediation because of a lesser commitment. It's easier getting schedules together for the mediator and the parties. And especially for my practice, which most often involves participants that are scattered throughout the country or the world, it's much easier to get them together in a remote format than trying to bring people together physically in one place. Remote mediations have also proven to be more time efficient and lower cost. There are no travel costs associated with remote mediation. You save the out-of-pocket costs, and you save all that lost time that comes with traveling around the country or the world. And with remote mediation, we found additional dividend. I'm not sure it's necessarily a good one, which is that during all those long downtimes one has in mediation, particularly for the participants, there's the opportunity to do other work, an opportunity that's often lost with live mediations. And most importantly, the third takeaway is remote mediation often works. We've all settled a lot of cases in the remote format, so it is a viable option. But then there are other perceived downsides, what we've learned over the past 2 years. And to me, the most important takeaway is at least the anecdotal perceived fact that it seems that remote mediations don't work quite as well as live mediations in terms of settling cases. And I would measure that on two parameters. Number one, I think fewer cases in remote mediations actually settle. And number two, I think the time it takes to settle cases in the remote format tends to be longer than live. More cases are settled at or very shortly after a live mediation than they are in the remote format. Again, that's not based on data. That's based on anecdotal perceptions. And I would love to see a rigorous study and some data to either support or refute that. Now, what are the downsides of remote mediation that we've learned? Number one, it's the converse of the primary advantage. Remote mediation is too easy. It's too easy for the parties to get together, which leads, I think, to less commitment to the process and less investment in the process by the parties. My sense, again, is that participants often don't take remote mediation as seriously as they do the live event. They're not necessarily coming as prepared or as invested with the notion of getting the case resolved today. And less commitment and less investment can lead to less successful settlement activity at the mediation itself. Just as an example, I had 2 recent mediations in which we did not settle during the course of the proceeding. In both of those, I was an advocate representing a participant. In one of them, we just ended too early. It was too easy for the parties to break on the notion they would resume later, and that never happened. And in the other one, it was evident that one of the parties did not come prepared. They sent to the mediation just 2 in-house lawyers. The other side had business people present who were going to look for a business solution to the issue. And there was a complete mismatch. The lawyers were not prepared to discuss a business solution with the business people on the other side. That would be unlikely to happen in a live mediation. Another negative has been the loss of intensity. We all know it from the mediations we've been through. Putting people in a room for hours and hours and hours into the night often helps produce movement and settlement. Fatigue is a beneficial factor in mediation, and I can't count how many cases I've been involved with that have settled sometime between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight. You lose that intensity in the remote format. And again, the 2 recent examples I gave are both examples of that phenomenon. In each case, the mediators terminated the mediation sometime in the late afternoon. We never got to that point of near exhaustion where the parties, having committed so much to the mediation process, take it over the line and get the case settled. And that leads to, as I said, the third observation, which is that it strikes me that the success rate is somewhat lower in remote mediations than in in-person mediations. Now, a partial solution to these downsides may be that mediators in remote settings must commit themselves to maintaining the intensity of the live proceeding as best they can and not quit early. Just because it's easy to walk out of the remote session, don't do it. Stick with it just as late as you would in a live mediation, and I predict you'll see more success in the mediations themselves. And as a last takeaway, I would suggest also to advocates that you school your clients in those same thoughts. When you're preparing a client for remote mediation, make sure they are as prepared to commit to it as they would be if they were traveling across the country to be in a live setting. Thank you for spending a little time with me, and I look forward to revisiting again sometime soon our ongoing experiences with remote and now hybrid mediations.